Hey, what's up everybody? It's Izzy from PowerliftingToWin.com, and if you haven't figured it out yet, in this video I'm going to be talking about powerlifting shoes. I just wrote a comprehensive piece on powerlifting shoes that's going to go into a lot more detail than this video does. What I want to do in this video is a lot like what I did in my knee sleeves video, and that's cover the shoes that I actually own, why I own them, and why I use them that way. Now, if I said to any one of you guys, I can add 25 pounds to your total in 4 weeks, you'd all be interested. But for some reason, if you can add 25 pounds to your total in 4 minutes by using different shoes, all of a sudden people think that you're nerding out. Are they right? Maybe. But the bottom line is that a lot of lifters are leaving pounds on the table by not having optimal footwear. With just a few small changes in what you're putting on your feet, you can lift more weight. What is the best powerlifting shoe? In my opinion, it's a bit of a misleading question because every lift has slightly different attributes that make the shoe, which is optimal for it, different. Let's start off with squat shoes. In my opinion, there are 3 universal factors that go into having a squat shoe be optimal. So I'll start off with this Olympic lifting shoe right here. This is a 2011 PTW from Rogue. First thing, the sole needs to be made of a non-compressible material, aka not rubber. It needs to be wood or plastic of some sort. The second thing is that you want the shoe to have a metatarsal strap, and what that's going to allow you to do is crank that thing down, suck the foot into the shoe, and make sure that your foot is not turning while you're squatting. Now, the last piece of criteria that I like to think about for determining whether or not a shoe is optimal for squatting is, does it reinforce the arch? Does it support the heel? Is there a reinforced heel cup in the shoe? And with an Olympic lifting shoe, that's exactly what you're going to get. So again, 3 factors: non-compressible sole, metatarsal strap, and a reinforced arch and heel support inside the shoe. The one thing that everybody wants to know is, like, do Olympic lifting shoes help? Well, I think it depends on your squat technique and how you squat. The main difference with the Olympic lifting shoe, obviously, is the heel down here. So as I said, I think the Olympic lifting shoe really depends on your technique. For most narrow and medium stance squatters, you're definitely going to prefer the heel on the Olympic lifting shoe, for the simple reason that with a medium or narrow stance, your legs aren't going to be going out, right? So they have to either go forwards or backwards. Now, if you don't want to end up really bent over in your squat, the legs have to go forwards. And the heel on the Olympic lifting shoe is going to encourage that knee travel, and it's going to make it easier for you to do. Now, if you are a lifter with longer femurs, this generally means that your knees need to track further forward for you to stay upright. The more forward knee travel that you have, the more ankle dorsiflexion range of motion that you need. And a heel is going to cut down the mobility requirements and make it much easier for you to hit depth and maintain a good posture. As far as exactly what heel height is optimal, let me show you 2 completely different heel heights. This one right here is 3/4 of an inch, and this one right here is closer to 2 inches. Now, in my opinion, unless you're a taller lifter over 6 feet tall, you probably don't need anything over 3/4 of an inch. Likewise, unless you're a smaller dude or a chick, you probably don't need anything shorter than 3/4 of an inch either. For taller guys, sometimes 3/4 of an inch is just not enough. Because taller lifters are relatively bigger human beings, they need a relatively taller heel sometimes to get the benefits of the Olympic lifting shoe. So if you're a taller guy who just doesn't see very much from a 3/4 of an inch heel, I'd recommend checking out VS Athletics, because they have a 1 1/4 inch heel usually, especially at the bigger sizes. The normal VS Athletics are going to be one of the only shoes you'll find that have a 1 1/4 inch heel without any modifications. For shorter lifters who find that 3/4 of an inch pushes them really far forward in the hole, I'd recommend that you check out the 1/2 inch heel of the Rogue Duin. That's up there on their website now, so it's a great alternative for those of you guys who think that 3/4 of an inch is just a bit too tall for you personally. Now, I know there are some guys out there who are wide stance squatters that like Olympic lifting shoes, but I do not. I feel like they throw me forward. Because for me, my wider stance squat is pretty hip dominant. And by bringing in Ollie shoes into the picture, it brings in a lot more quads and it just throws me off. If you have stronger quads, you'll probably prefer Ollie shoes regardless of, what stance width that you have. But for me and a lot of other wider stance squatters, the Ollie shoes just throw us forward and they're just not ideal. The problem for wide stance squatters is that all of the requirements that make a good squat shoe are exactly the same, but you just don't want the heel. So what you're really looking for is a flat-heeled shoe with a non-compressible sole, a metatarsal strap, and a reinforced heel cup, and arch support. But you're basically not going to find that anywhere. I've looked. I don't think it's available commercially off the rack. So what are the options? Well, the first option is that you can just get wrestling shoes. That's the cheap option. Now, the problem with wrestling shoes is that they don't have a metatarsal strap. Usually, though, they are thin enough that they're not going to be compressible. The second option that most people go for is to get a pair of good old Chuck Taylors. Now, in my opinion, this is a Chuck Taylor is one of the worst, most garbage shoes that you can use for powerlifting. Now, I'm sure that's going to come as a surprise or offend a lot of you, but here's the thing. The insole in Chucks is made completely of rubber. This part right here, I'm going to actually come show you and set this up. I can actually compress it with my fingers. So if I can do this with my fingers, what do you think is happening with 405 on your back? I pretty much see no point in Chucks for powerlifting at all. They're squishy, so they don't have a non-compressible sole. They don't have a metatarsal strap. They're pretty flimsy in general. They don't do a great job of reinforcing the arch either. I would just never use them, period. Now, one of the best options that you have as a wide stance squatter is you can take an Olympic lifting shoe to a cobbler and basically have them remove the effective heel height. What that's going to do is you're still going to have the reinforced heel cup, you're still going to have the arch support, you're still going to have the metatarsal strap, the non-compressible sole as well. So that's probably the best option, but it's very expensive to do that. As for me personally, I'm currently squatting in the same shoes that I deadlift in. These are the Sumo deadlift shoes from Max Barbell. Essentially what these are, they are a deadlift shoe. So here's kind of the specs for you. The sole here is only 2 millimeters to 5 millimeters thick, so it's barely thicker than a deadlift slipper. But it does have a metatarsal strap. The heel is somewhat reinforced, and you have good arch support and good grip on the bottom. So even though I don't consider this optimal because I would rather have a shoe that isn't so thin for squatting, it's pretty close and it meets most of the specs. If you're a wide stance squatter and you want a flat shoe with a metatarsal strap that doesn't compress on you, you can check out the Sumo deadlift shoes from Max Barbell. I'll be talking more about these when we get to deadlift shoes later. Now, bench shoes are a much more simple affair. Realistically, there's only two considerations for bench shoes. One is, does your federation allow you to bench with your heels up? Because if they do, in my opinion, it really doesn't matter what bench shoes you wear at all. Now, if your federation does not allow you to bench with your heels up, I do like benching with an Ollie shoe, and that's just because I like to arch and put my feet back as much as I can. Heel on an Ollie shoe is going to let your foot be flat against the ground, even though it's not flat in the shoe, if that makes sense. And in fact, what I've actually done is modified these shoes to be the maximum legal height in the IPF, which is 5 centimeters or 2 inches tall. And this allows me to get my feet almost as far back as I can with my heels up. So for someone who relies on a big arch like me, getting a bench shoe with a modified taller heel can be a great way to add a few pounds to your bench. The main consideration for a deadlift shoe is how thick the sole is. All I gotta do is ask you one simple question. Can you pull more from a 1-inch deficit or from the floor? Well, almost everybody is gonna pull more from the floor, right? So why would you pull in a shoe that adds height to the pull? I mean, you're essentially doing a deficit pull for no reason. When it comes to deadlift shoes, for conventional deadlifts, I really see no reason to ever use anything besides deadlift slippers. So the reason why I prefer deadlift slippers is because they're essentially just a sock with a rubber grip on the bottom. They're 1/8 of an inch tall, if that. This is about as close to the ground as you can get. For sumo pulling, I do not prefer deadlift slippers, and here are the main reasons why. My foot moves around in the deadlift slipper, so when I'm planting my feet out wide and trying to spread the floor and keep my knees out, my foot just rolls over the edge of the sock. I really don't like pulling sumo without a reinforced side on the shoe. Again, this just lets me drive my knees out hard. One other key fact about the Sabo deadlift shoe compared to deadlift slippers is that the sole on the Sabo deadlift shoe is only 2 millimeters to 5 millimeters tall, which compared to the deadlift slipper is about twice as tall. So whereas the deadlift slippers are normally going to be a 1/16 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch off the ground, these are going to be somewhere more like between 1/10 of an inch to a 1/5 of an inch off the ground. I really love these Sabo deadlift shoes. I mean, honestly, the first time I pulled in them after switching from slippers, because I am a sumo puller, I was able to start using about 10 pounds more on all of my work sets, just from the added stability of the metatarsal strap and everything like that. If you guys found the content interesting, informative, or entertaining, please like, share, and send it out into the interwebs for me. Subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to check out PowerliftingToWin.com for more great powerlifting information. Have a nice day.